Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Procrastinator's Pit Stop. Today we have another exciting guest for you, Inam Inamullah. Ina is an acclaimed artist, poet, and playwright who has overcome incredible challenges, including being affected by polio, to transform his pain into beauty through his art. His work is deeply inspired by Sufi wisdom. In his upcoming book, Whispers in the Flight, set to release on August 16th, 2024, it takes readers on a mystical journey of spiritual discovery. Drawing inspiration from the Taoist The Compass of the Birth, this book invites readers to explore themes of self-discovery, overcoming obstacles, and finding unity in diversity. Through captivating narratives, Inam encourages readers to unlock the hidden chambers of their soul and embark on a transformative path using non-denominational Sufi techniques to manifest self-awareness and purpose. Inam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Before we get started on the book, why don't you share with us a little bit about your journey and sort of what led you to be here today?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm originally from South Asia. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I was born in Karachi. And when I was a baby, I was infected with polio, and so I grew up uh, in that environment of having a right foot at 45 degrees angle and my right knee being bent. So growing up and going to early school, kindergarten, first grade, until the fifth grade was extremely difficult for me. And the reason was, as you can imagine, the kids are brutal.
Yeah.
And if you are the only kid like that in the class, then it was not easy for me to. So I faced a lot of challenges growing up, starting from that age. Uh, so I was admitted in school when I was almost five, and when the boys would go out, it was all boys school, and when the boys will go out to play, I would sit in the corner, and just watch. So my art teacher saw that, and what she did was to basically take me every day from there on to the art class while the boys were out playing 5 days a week, and she did that for 5 years. So from age five to age 10, I basically trained with her every day, and that gave me the foundation of the art that I needed basically at a very early age. And that's also, uh, it protected me from all the brutality of of the kids being not so nice to me. So that's how, but still it was tough. It was not easy. And then at the age of 10, I had a couple of surgeries done to my right leg. The surgeons were able to, turn my foot straight and my knee straight. However, since the right leg was shorter and weaker, it still is about an inch shorter. I had a limp, very visible. I still do, and so that challenge that continued basically with me throughout my life. It was not easy to live with that, and but at the same time, it was a great teacher too. It was a something that gave me strength that no other people had. It gave me the wisdom to be able to handle it, the courage, the wisdom to be able to handle situations like these. And so I'm not at all disheartened by that fact. I'm actually happy that I had a situation which was different than other people, which ended up giving me all the strength that I needed to grow up. Um, Going from there on, joined the high school, college, finished my bachelor's there, moved to the U.S. in 1984 as a student for my master's in Los Angeles, and I finished my master's there, and that's where I was exposed to the canvases and oil paints for the first time. Then I got a full-time job, as you know, corporate America environment. You don't have much time to, it was a hobby of mine at that time, but I was good. I was better than other people. So I used to paint, maybe 5 or 6 pieces a year because that's all the time I used to have. And but I tried my best to continue painting as much as possible. I was trained initially on portraits, pencil sketches, charcoal, and stuff like that. But later on, I started using the canvases and oils and acrylics and all that. Then I started traveling to Eastern Europe, care of my job, to Finland, to Russia, and all that. And there I was exposed to the birch trees for the first time in my life, and I absolutely fell in love with those trees, and I started painting those birch trees. So I'm commonly known in the market throughout the world as the birch tree guy because of my art, because I paint those trees so much. And as a professional artist, you have to remain with the one genre, one style. Otherwise, people get confused, and you're not supposed to deviate too much. I still do stuff here and there for family and friends, but for professional purposes, I stay with my landscapes primarily. Uh, you mentioned other, so I definitely have art in me, in my blood, performing arts, other forms of art. So I write plays, I produce plays, I act in plays. We recently did an Urdu translation of Romeo and Juliet, and I converted that from a tragedy to a comedy, and we performed in Atlanta. It was a huge hit, and now it's going to 12 different cities, traveling basically. The whole thing is traveling. I've always been a writer, in both the languages, English and Urdu, and but I've written most in Urdu language, poetry, a lot of poetry. But at the same time, I've been writing stuff in English too. Then what happened? I'm continuing. If you want me to stop, I'll stop. So
No, but I used to go.
okay. I was exposed to a poem that was written almost 900 years ago in Persia by a person named Fariduddin Attar, a very famous poet of Persian language, someone from whom Rumi learned a lot, from whom Sadi learned a lot. So he became sort of a master teacher for all these people who came after him, because they all followed his style. He has written multiple books. One book is one poem actually that I'm referring to, which in English is called The Conference of the Birds, which has been translated into 85 different languages. I don't speak Persian language, so I was given a gift of a book in English language. And one day, I had my knee replacement surgery, and I was in pain and suffering and alone in the house, and the book was next to me. I thought, well, I never read this, so let me read it. So I started reading it, and it hit me so hard, just a few pages, that I continued to read. It's a very long poem. It's 4,500 verses long, and each verse requires an explanation. I mean, it's so deep, philosophical, and all that. So it was not easy for me to follow, but I tried my best to follow as much as possible. But more I read, more I was impressed with it, and it definitely teaches the Sufi theory. It's an inner cleansing process, basically. How do you reach from point A to point B as an inner cleansed person? Basically, it's a process. And Attar, the writer, takes you through 7 valleys of love, or 7 valleys, basically, where you have to shed your ego, where you have to shed all the baggage that we carry on in our lives. And these valleys are, of course, metaphorical valleys, and he walks us through all those things. So I retained a professor of Persian language for 6 months to learn from her the true meaning, the depth of the poetry of the poem. Twice a week, we used to have a Zoom call like we're having right now, and she would teach me 1.5 hours twice a week. And I finished the whole poem with her, which was actually an abridged version of teaching in 6 months. Then when I finished with it, I said, what do I do with it? I have all this knowledge that I gained with it, so much impressed with it. We have 3 sons. I said, if I try to explain this to my sons, they will probably have no understanding what I'm talking about. So I decided to write a simple novel in English language that an average English reader can understand. However, in the novel, I tried to embed the theories and philosophies of Attar that he expressed in The Conquest of the Birds So instead of seven metaphorical valleys, I take young American hikers to the Atlas Mountains in Morocco on a hiking trip. And Atlas Mountains also has seven valleys, and they are very difficult to hike, one of the most difficult hikes in the world. And they face difficulties, and there is a sage, there is a guide, guides them and convinces them to move forward using the same theories and same parables that Atar used to convince the birds to move forward to a destination. And finally, they reach to a destination and they find their solace and their content and the meaning of the life. So what I've done is I've taken a very complicated philosophy, very detailed, and in about 185 pages or so, wrote a simple knowledge that everybody can follow, but at the same time can get the message of this inner cleansing process that Atar wanted to give us. And that's set to release on 16th of August, 4 days from today. And hopefully your viewers will grab it from Amazon and rate it back.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'm sure that we're looking forward to that book. I mean, the whole self discovery process, self improvement, personal development is obviously always ongoing. We're always learning something new. We're always gleaning something that maybe we overlooked from, something in the past or something that's going on right now as well. Thank you for sharing with us that is quite an amazing story. You've had a lot of sounds like you had a lot of interesting experiences. I do have a couple of questions out of that.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
when you said that you were going through your art career and you said that you really focused in on the birch trees, what was it specifically about the birch trees that you found so captivating?
So that was the beginning of my professional art career, which was, I'm going to say, late 1990s, early 2000s, when my travel used to be in Eastern Europe. And just just the magneticity, the beauty of the trees, the bark, the smell of the bark, and also the reaction of the people in that part of the world. Birch trees are sort of a religion. People have poems on those trees. People have songs for the trees. People come to worship when they go to the trees. And I saw and observed all that. And I saw people crying. I saw people asking for different things, not from the trees, but whatever their belief was of divinity, but to stay in that environment that the trees provided that connected them with the divinity, that whatever the divinity they believed in. So the trees have this enormous power. These trees have these enormous powers that I have personally not experienced with any other kinds of trees. And I personally experienced it too. And when I personally experienced it, I said, this is something very special that I need to pay attention to. Maybe it's a calling. Maybe it's something that I need to do, because that was the time when I was trying to figure out, should I be a portrait artist full time? Should I be an abstract artist full time? Because I used to do everything. I still do everything. And I was trained in such a way that I can do everything, even today. Whatever you throw at me, I can do it. But I had to stay with one theme. And so I said, this is probably my calling. When I did my initial few pieces and exhibited in New York at the New York Art Expo for the first time, which was early 2000 something, for my surprise, all 100 pieces, 100% of the pieces were sold day one. So I realized that there is some value in what I'm trying to do and what I learned basically from these trees. So I continued that path. Now I do paint other landscapes too, other trees too, besides birch trees, but that birch trees have been my most commonly painted tree. Now I'm known all around the world. 80% of what I paint goes to Europe, and 20% remains in North America.
Excellent. That sounds like a really interesting piece. So do you have any other pieces right now that you're working on, or Is it managed in the book?
No, I do art every night. I start painting at 11 p.m. or so approximately. I have my favorite music on at that time, and I go until at least 5 a.m. every night. And try to sleep after 5 o'clock, and I get up at lunch between 9 and 10, and then do other stuff. What am I supposed to do? And I might take a nap or so in the afternoon for half an hour just to make up for my not having enough hours of sleep at night. Maybe spend a couple of more hours on art. So in art, I spend about 8 hours a day every day. And the reason is because the demand for my art is all over the world. I mean, I get these galleries calling me, asking for more. And so I gotta work every day to be able to fulfill not all the demand, but whatever demand I can. And if you like to see my art, I have some samples shown on my art gallery on website. It's called inamgallery.com, which is INAMGALLERY.com.
Excellent. Sounds excellent as well. So don't worry for everybody who's listening to the show. We'll put that in the description so you can go and check out those paintings as well. So swinging back to the book and
Yeah.
now the actual process of that. Uh, what do you suppose were some of your biggest challenges, and how did you overcome those when you were writing the book?
Believe it or not, writing the book after having gained the knowledge of reading the poem and then learning from the lady for 6 months was not as difficult as the publishing process. That was 5 times more difficult, and it still is. I mean, 4 more days to left, we still have open action items to do and all that. But if we focus just on the writing part, my biggest challenge was actually to uh, take something that is level philosophical ideas, metaphorical ideas, old parables, and convert them to today's world, easy to understand for our youngsters, for our elders, everybody. So that was the most difficult part. How do I transform basically something that's too difficult into easy to understand? And a lot of writers say that, especially in poetry, that it is easy to write difficult poetry, complicated poetry, but it's very difficult to write simple poetry. So that's exactly what happened with me. That was my biggest challenge writing the book, actually. I understood the concepts very well. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but I was having a hard time finding the right, easy, simple words to express those ideas in the form of a novel, keep in mind. So going from a poem to a novel was not an easy thing to do. So that was my biggest challenge in writing the book.
And can you share some of your process and some of your methodology of how you actually went from taking this seemingly, really daunting task because it was just so much information and just condensing and making it, more simple and easier to follow. What steps did you take to do that?
So I'm going to share something with you, which you may find, maybe you'll find strange, that in my situation, and I've heard this from other people also, people who write poetry and plays and other stuff, that it comes in the form of a data dump on you at a certain period of time. Let's say, you start writing and you can't write from 11 to 1 a.m. and you go get a cup of coffee, you go back, and then you feel as if there are 15 people pouring ideas in your mind, and your mind is full of ideas, and words and sentences and paragraphs are just coming in. Is they coming in from way above that you have no idea what the source is, and you start typing or you start writing them down. So that's exactly what happened with me in this book also. When I was writing that, I tried to sit a few times and I had what you call the writer's block, and I was not able to go further. So I gave a 3, 4, 5 days of gap and went for a little unwinding trip to the mountains close by, did some of my artwork, came back, sat that night, and boom. I mean, it was like, a big shower opened up, and every drop of water was like a sentence, and it was started coming in. And so, as far as the structure of the book is concerned, the thought of using Atlas Mountains, Morocco, the thought of how I'm going to convert these, the thought of the characters I'm going to use, what kind of characters would they be, all those started pouring in without me making any effort. It was sort of automatic. And I started taking notes, points notes down. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, I had the basic structure of the book in the form of points, maybe 20 pages, 25 pages already written up and ready to go. And from there on, my challenge was to take each point and make that a 2-page description of it. And because I had to write a novel close to 200 pages, so I had to expand onto those points. Those were bullet points, basically. And that's how this process went with me. That may be different with other people, but that usually happens with me. I'm not someone who would, you can say that I'm not a hard-working writer in the sense that who would sit and read 15 books and write 3 pages based on the knowledge of that, then read 15 books and add 15 more pages. I don't do that. I try to absorb one idea as much as possible, as deep as possible, and then let the nature come to me and tell me what to write about it. And it does come to me every time. I've never been disappointed. So that's how the structure initially was put in, and that's how I started. And then, as far as the expansion is concerned, then it was basic English writing. Getting help from some friends and family. My youngest son is a very good writer. I got some help from him that I'm kind of stuck. I don't know how to write these 3 lines. So, they will guide me and I will go further and do that. And then at the end of writing all that, I worked with an editor, a professional editor, who fixed up. English is not my first language. So he was able to guide me in the right direction as far as the language is concerned and fixed up a lot of issues that I had in it. So that's how the process went for me.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've had your share of experiences with that.
Mm-hmm.
And would you mind maybe just sharing a small, tiny episode from your book?
Sure, absolutely. As I mentioned, that there are 7 valleys, and those are metaphorical valleys. But and in Athar's poem, those valleys are: the valley of quest is the first one, the valley of love is the second one, the valley of understanding is the third one, valley of detachment is the fourth one, valley of unity is the fifth one, valley of bewilderment is the sixth one, and the valley of annihilation is the final one. So these are his original one, and I've used the same concept. And for the valley of unity, I will read a couple of paragraphs for you. So it goes like this: that, and this is the sage, the leader of the group, who's guiding the hiking expedition, who is explaining them basically each stage using the same parables, same stories from the original poem. So he goes that our next stop is the valley of pure unity. His name is Professor Ali, by the way. So Professor Ali, like the wise Huppo, told the group, here every soul joins in invisible tapestry. Look around. Whether you see many or few, all are connected in harmony. This unity celebrates diversity, a mix of forms and essences coming together, not a single uniform thing. In this valley, numbers and individuality disappear. 2, 3, you and I vanish. What remains is our shared essence, how we are connected and travel together in unity. As we enter this valley, let us leave behind our separate selves and embrace the collective journey, for we find our true potential in unity. So that's a little something from the book.
Well, it sounds very captivating for sure.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to reading more about it. And it's a very interesting topic, the unity through diversity, especially given all the current happenings in our world. So, what's your take on unity through diversity and sort of how that's playing out in our world right now, and why is it so difficult for us to find a point to be united?
I wish I had an answer for it. If I had an answer for it, then I can write a book that can sell a lot more copies than any other book. But I do have my own ideas, like everybody else does, and they are no different than other people's ideas in this regard. I think there is too much materialism in this world now than before. I think there is too much ego now than previously in the world, and these two things, the material, the interest in acquiring as much as possible, more toys, and the ego that I can never be wrong, other people are wrong, and my theory, my religion, my philosophy, my way of life is the only life, and everybody else is wrong. Not having the appreciation or at least feeling of accommodation for other people's opinions and ideas has become, we have progressed in many ways in science and technology way further than before. Of course, we have a much more comfortable life as a result of that. We are having this conference call as a result of that. We have iPhones, we have all sorts of things available to us that make our lives easy. So we have done human beings have done significant progress in certain areas. There is no doubt about that. But the actual values that a human being should have, I'm not sure that we have actually made progress. I personally think we have gone in the other direction than before. And there is definitely a need to pay attention. There is definitely a need to pay attention. I mean, politicians, religious leaders are just focused on gaining as many followers as possible so they can retain their position. We need people who are good philosophers. We need people who are good leaders, who can think about the greatness of the human being, and who can think about the benefit of the culture, not only in one place, but every place, and take humanity as one brotherhood, and make sure that we share our resources, make sure that we protect our planet, we make sure that we have food for everyone. And the number of billionaires are growing on a daily basis in this world. At the same time, the number of people who are going hungry is also increasing at the same rate. So that variation that it's creating from the high to the low is a big problem, in my opinion. And I think that should be addressed, that should be resolved. Now, I'm doing my part by writing this book, because this book does force people to think in that manner, that there are other things in life besides gaining fun, expensive toys and fancy stuff for you. There are much more important things in life that which we should pay attention to, and it's an inner cleansing process. So that's my contribution, and I'm sure you're doing your contribution by bringing a podcast like this. I hope people listen to you. I hope people listen to your other guests too, because you're focused on that and learn from it. And as a result of that, hopefully we'll have a better world.
Oh, we can certainly hope we can aspire to have a better world one day as well.
That's true.
In your experience, do you see a very big difference? You mentioned the whole materialism and ego. Do you see a very big difference in sort of the generational gap, like between, say, someone who's younger, who's just growing up between 12 to 18, as opposed to somebody who's now in the workforce? Do you think that, society has a big role to play in that? In that, what we supposedly, what we quote unquote want, or what we should be striving for?
Well, the two generations that you mentioned, I personally don't. Well, the only thing I do see is that the generation between 12 to 18 would be way much more advanced technically than the other generations after them or before them, and that's the only difference I see. I don't see educational institutions or even parents paying too much attention at home. In my mother tongue, we call it talim and tarbiyat. Talim is education, basic education. You learn English language, you learn mathematics, you learn science, you become an engineer, you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, you become a businessman. All those things, all kinds of education that give you a profession, make you able to make money and survive. But there's another kind of education that makes you a better human being. I think we are focusing a lot more on STEM, and that's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but as we are paying more and more attention to STEM type technologies or education, we are paying way less importance to tarbiyah, which is basically is that how do we become better human being? How do we become more honest? How we can learn not to lie but to be truthful? How we can take care of our communities? If we live in a community that needs attention, and environment, planet, all those things come into play. There is very little teaching going on in this area. People spend enormous amount of time these days. You mentioned 12 to 18. I see, people who are younger than me who have kids in that age range, that kids are going to school full time, then they're going to a sports full time, and they're going to a musical instrument lesson full time, and by the time they get home they have zero energy left. They have to do homework and they go to sleep. So what's happening is they're learning the trades to survive in this world, yes, but very small amount of learning is happening with them as to how to become a better human being, and get rid of all the bad stuff that we bring ourselves from the previous generations and become a better generation. So I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful that the younger generation will take the charge, because I read a report recently, if I'm not mistaken, it's a Harvard report that says that people are now, after COVID, people are spending more money and time on experiences than the toys. So instead of buying expensive cars or bigger houses and expensive furniture, people are spending more money on travel. People are spending more money on restaurants, going and eating out. So uh, so that change is a positive change, in my opinion, that it can probably bear more fruits at a later stage. So as COVID brought a lot of negative things, it also brought some positive things with it. So I hope we can, continue on that journey. We may be able to see some good results.
No, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned something interesting too, the fact that, human beings have a tendency to not, really be spurred to any sort of major change unless something negative happens. So, it was a very negative thing, but, maybe it was the smack in the head we needed to, really sort of start to readjust. So there was that. Now, I have a very, I think I don't think it's a difficult question, but it might be too vast. If you had to give one sort of major piece of wisdom, some pinnacle point out of all that knowledge that's in that poem and in your book, what would it be for people to even just get started?
So the biggest point the book is trying to make is the concept of unity of the universe. That's the biggest point that the book conveys. And I'll give you an example that all of us are moving in the direction of a great ocean. And and the Sufi idea is that if you stop and look at others and criticize others and make a judgment call that you are doing wrong, then you basically are creating a flaw in your own self. It's against the purification process of the self. Whatever others are doing, as far as they're moving in the same direction, let them go, let them their own path, let them find their own, the way they want to go towards the same ocean. We will all meet at the end of the day at that destination, at that great ocean. And the whole idea is that one person might merge with that ocean in the form of a pure drop of water, because that person didn't stop in the way to judge other people. That person left his ego or her ego aside during the journey, purified himself or herself, and reached at this great ocean as a pure drop of water, a clean drop of water. And when it gets mixed with the ocean, it becomes part of the ocean. And the ocean knows this drop very well because it's exactly like the ocean, and accepts it and absorbs it. The other person may reach the same destination in the form of a pebble, because this person stops and made a judgment call on everybody that he or she saw in the way, and did not purify himself or herself. And when it reached the destination, as remember, we all have to reach the destination. So when we reach the destination, it did not mix up with the ocean the way the first drop mixed. And it's because of the ego wrapped around itself, it dropped at the bottom of the ocean for eternity. So it will basically stay there, will not move. And the other drop, the first drop, will move with the ocean wherever the ocean will go. So that's the message that Attar had tried to give in his poem, and that's the message that I have tried to give in my book, is to be like the first drop of water. Clean yourself, become a better human being, don't be judgmental, and when you reach your destiny, which we all will, that's when you will enjoy. That's when you will realize that how wonderful this unity with the universe is, if you actually become part of the unity the way you should be part of the unity.
Okay, so we've got unity. Just knowing that everybody's the same, and we're all from the same source.
Correct.
And then we've got, we're human beings, not human doing. So focus more on the being and less on the actual doing. Just allow space for that, for the development. And then we've also got just being non-judgmental. Again, just having that, just keeping that space, and having compassion, and being able to maybe not understand the the intricacies of why another individual might or might not be doing something, but just to understand that we kind of all operate on the same basic rule. We all operate in the best interests of either ourselves or others, but it's the best interest of something based on the information that we have, and that information is different for everybody. It's a very noble concept. So let me ask you: is there anything today, Inam, that maybe we haven't gone over, or that maybe we should have asked but didn't?
I think you covered pretty good, Chris. A fantastic set of questions. I've been on multiple podcasts in the last 45 days since I decided to publish, and got hooked with the publisher. And this was, I would say, one of the best. You asked all the right questions, and we had a easy going answering session. You allowed me to talk, so I truly appreciate that. And I was able to, I hope, express my ideas, and I hope those ideas get conveyed to your audience. Are you going to have the picture of the book on your podcast for people to see it?
Oh yes, for sure. So for everybody listening, we are going to have we're going to have the links down to the gallery, and also when the book comes out, we'll have a link to the book as well, and we'll have some of the book covers as well too.
The reason I mentioned that is that since it's the original story is the Conference of the Birds, it's story of the birds versus the people. What you see on the cover page is actually a painting that I have done myself. So that's a little unique thing that authors don't do, because they're usually not artists. So I spent enormous amount of time doing that painting. I wanted to stay true to the concept. I wanted to stay true to the idea, and that's what I've tried to do. So all the publishers and the book community is raving about it. Even Amazon, I got an email saying it's one of the prettiest covers they have actually seen. So I'm very proud of it. So hopefully you'll be able to share with your audience.
Oh, well, we'll for sure share it with our audience. And just before we go, I don't know,
Sure,
what is the best way for somebody to reach out to you, whether it be, questions about the book or maybe to, get a painting?
sure. So
What's the best way?
why don't I leave two website addresses, if that's okay? One
Yeah.
for the art, one for the book, and that's the best way of reaching out. The art website is inamgallery.com. My name is Inam, which is INAM, and then the word gallery.com, easy to remember. That's the art website. I don't sell art through website, but I do exhibit, but there's a contact form and a telephone number and email in there if you like to reach out. Then the name of the book is Whispers of the Flight, which I should have mentioned time ago when we started the program, but that's okay. It's never too late. Whispers of the Flight, and the website is the same name, whispersoftheflight.com. So if people type in whispersoftheflight.com, they should be able to go to the book website. It does have some information about me, about the book, about the process, how they can order, all that. They have a link, or they will have a link before the 16th to be able to connect to the Amazon and Ingram Sparks website. It will be published on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and 50 other platforms. So it will be available pretty much everywhere. So these are the two best ways to reach me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Inam, and it was a lovely conversation. To all the listeners, thanks again for tuning in to Procrastination's Pit Stop. And as always, keep that motivation going, keep that inspiration going, and if you can't find it yourself, be that inspiration or motivation for somebody else. Until next time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.